Hello and welcome to another Slab-tastic comedy Slab, where we get a different comedy on the slab to dissect this time. I say different if you haven't heard the show before. Special welcome to your first Slab. And to explain for your slab virginity to be got up to speed, if I may use that term, I'm Adrian in Kent. He is, over to you,
Shane O'Connor in just casual clothes today.
You were awarded a surname. If you're having a surname, I'm being surnamed Lacey, of the venerable house of Ronald Lacey, but that's another story. Great acting tradition that I've failed to keep going. Anyway.
Before we do all the explanations and everything.
Talking about
like name dropping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because we're a comedy slab podcast and we love comedy, that's what we love. That's what we talk about. Fenella Fielding, sad loss this week.
Rest
we were just
chatting
just before we started recording. You worked with her.
I did indeed, yeah. Hashtag name drop. Sorry, it's occupational hazards. Going back to my days at BBC TV Centre, working on the cruise there. I don't mean ship's cruise. This is at Wood Lane, West London. It was a children's drama. Now, because it's a few years ago now, I'm afraid the title eludes me for the moment. But what I do remember is a lovely quote from Fenella, which came via a witness to it, which was I'm trying to remember, it's one of those things, I don't actually remember if I was there to hear her say it, but I remember Nigel, the camera supervisor, lovely guy, quoting this further down the line, where she said, she's all lined up for her close-up, ready for your close-up, Ms. Fielding, and she said, "Make me look wonderful." And he said, "I couldn't possibly not, Fenella." Which, that's why he's a camera supervisor and a brilliant guy.
Was she serious? Was she? You know how like Harry H. Corbett was into method acting and all that sort of stuff.
I thought you were going to say something else for a moment, but yeah, okay.
Methadone.
Method one acting.
Yeah, no, he was a really serious actor, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He was going to be the British Marlon Brando, was he not?
That's right.
Out?
Yeah. Was she? Do you know? Did you get the sense she was like that at all, or was she a bit more fun-like?
I think she could send herself up, and I think that anecdote actually does it. She almost was doing a self-parody of a Fenella Fielding doing Fenella Fielding. Yeah. If you see what I mean. Yeah. And that's what I loved about that story. Very short story. But
lovely memory, sad loss. Anyway, sorry I interrupted you. You're about to explain how the Comedy Slab podcast works.
I sort of did. Well, it does. Well, we'll make it work. We have to.
Okay.
We'll stand by it. It's my idea. You ran with it, you fool. And now we're stuck with it. And I'm stuck with you.
We're committed to it. We bought the electric and everything.
So. Yeah. We've got the cogs whirring. So, So, essentially, each week we have a different comedy, be it TV, radio, podcast, etc., digital, wherever it comes from. And we take it in turns to set each other homework for the next week. I set last week's for this week, if you see what I mean. And we're going to put it on the slab and see who salutes. And I'm quaking a bit like I did when I suggested a Stuart Lee comedy to you, Shane, a few weeks ago, and was mostly pleasantly surprised with your reaction. I'd invested, and indeed have invested in Stuart Lee over the years, and not so many years for me with Sarah Kendall, for she is the performer we're looking at this week. I've only come across her in maybe the last year or so. No, actually, tell a lie, because she's also an actor. What we're going to listen to is, we've got 3 clips lined up, in fact, just in case you haven't heard the show. It's Sarah Kendall, an Australian Trilogy. She is Australian, as the title implies. But I was going to say, I had come across her, not that I would then have been able to put a name to her, but she was one of the actors supporting Sally Phillips, the star of Claire in the Community. Now, that's another Radio 4 comedy. You've come across that.
Claire in the Community, yeah. My brother is a big fan of Claire in the Community. I haven't had as much success getting on with it as he has, but he raves about it. He loves it. Yeah, I saw she'd done that. She'd been one of the supporting actresses in that, hadn't she? Really, never heard of the woman before though. Sarah Kendall. And I have to say, the initial thing when I found out she was Australian, it took me back to the 1980s? Remember, you couldn't move in this country for Australian entertainers and actors, and when Home and Away and Neighbours were up there.
Oh,
height.
yeah.
Like, if you were Australian and said, I want a job in broadcasting, mate, you would like, you hadn't finished the sentence and you got the gig, hadn't you, really? Not so much now, though.
Are you thinking, amongst others, of Mark Little? Because wasn't he in one of the soaps, Australian soaps?
Yeah, I interviewed Mark Little, actually. No, one of the rare occasions when, like, in radio, you interview people. You interview a lot of people on ISDN, don't you? Down the line, as they say, over an internet connection, basically, that posh internet connection. And I interviewed Mark Little face to face. He actually came into the studio.
That's much nicer, isn't it? If you can see the whites of their eyes.
The whites or reds, it depends on what time of the day and what they've been doing. But yeah, great guy. And you're talking about being nervous. I was quite nervous about meeting him because he was. What was his character? I can't remember his character in.
I'm not a soap fiend. Was it Home and Away that he was in, or was it Neighbours? I think it was Neighbours.
I think it was Neighbours, but he was a kind of tough guy, wasn't he? And you always think that they're like the character that they play if they're good actors. So, but yeah, no, he was a good guy. Yeah, he was around that time though, wasn't it? But like everybody, like Australians, you couldn't move for Australians. Everybody was Australia mad, and we kind of went off it a bit. So when I heard her voice and I thought, oh yeah, she's Australian, it kind of took me back to that. Is all I'm saying. Although she's from Newcastle, isn't she? Which is kind of probably one of the most obscure places that you can come from in.
It's New South Wales, yeah.
The whole of New South Wales, the whole of Australia, I don't know. I mean, who do you know who said, I've just come back from 2 weeks in Australia on my holidays. Where did you go? I went to Newcastle. You never hear that, do you?
Well, I think people are confused coming from the UK. If someone says to you Newcastle is in Wales, it really is doing your head in. So, yeah, you say, well, probably you need to sober up and come back and tell me about your holiday some other day.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we got 3 clips lined up. But before we play the first of those, just to get a taster, I should say it's a BBC Studios production and was out on Radio 4 and remains on the BBC Radio iPlayer for, I've forgotten now, was it, when I looked, it was a decent length of time, a few weeks, I think.
I think it's got a few weeks left, doesn't it? Yeah.
But of course, there will be stuff out there on the YouTube and all manner of outlets. And best of all, if you get a chance to see her live, which I confess I haven't, but if I had a chance, if she was around this neck of the woods, she is actually now London-based. So here we are talking about her as an Australian artiste, but she lives in London these days. So a headline from you before we get into actually hearing something from her.
Surprised.
Pleasantly or otherwise?
I'm just leaving it at that for the moment. Surprised. I don't
tease.
know. I've made my mind up. You just wanted a headline. You're going to have to read the rest of the body text to.
That's a very short headline, if I may say so.
It's clickbait.
Surprised clickbait.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I just say as well? Just want a word from our sponsor this week because. I've had my first cold off my son. My son's only 9 months old.
You're doing well. 9 months without a cold from a baby.
Because he's quite a snotty child as well. It's official. I mean, that was a diagnosis. They said he's quite a snotty child.
Like father, like son.
Exactly. I said, oh, okay. I said, oh, be like that if you want to. And they went, see?
Is this the national health? Surely, if you're really snotty, you should be going private.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, but he was quite snotty. I don't know why they said that, but they did say that anyway. And they said he'd be prone to a lot of colds. So the first one he's had. So, and he's given it to me this week. But I'm amazed how quickly I've got over it. And I think it's because of our sponsor this week, Cavonia. Well, they're not really our sponsor, but I'm going to have a quick look now, if that's okay. Will you play the clip? All right.
Oh, fine, okay. I will set the scene. My first reservation, I come at this as from a huge position of fandom and enjoyment, but I would query the title because it doesn't tell us an awful lot, does it? An Australian Trilogy. Oh, it tells us it's in 3 parts, and coincidentally, we have 3 clips, but they're all from the 3rd part of the trilogy. I chose the 3rd part because that's available for longer on iPlayer. But if I had to call it something, well, one of the titles that went through my head, but your first idea is never your best anyway, but this was one of the first ideas, A Tale of Two Grandmothers, or A Tale of Two Grandmas, because that's, right. I mean, essentially it's a family tale. But anyway, we start off clip number 1 now, and she's sitting outside with, we'd have to say, she's recalling as a child sitting outside with Grandma Shirley, her favourite of her two grandmas. The other one she calls a bit boring, but we'll get to that a bit later on. So they're out under the stars, admiring the skies. And I think she's about, if memory serves, about 12 years old. That's not the grandma. That's our star, Sarah Kendall.
It was a really hot Australian summer night, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It looked spectacular. Only that day, the renowned physicist Richard Feynman had died. The man who had solved the mystery of why the Challenger space shuttle disintegrated 73 seconds into its flight 2 years previously in 1986. And I said the thing that I assume is the most said thing when people look at a stunning constellation. There's got to be life out there. And Grandma Shirley said, "Oh, there is." She said, "Can you keep a secret?" I was like, yes, I can totally keep a secret. I am the best at keeping secrets. She said, "When I was about your age, I was taken." I said, "By who?" And she looked up at the stars and she said, "By them."
And I think actually that's probably about the point where I became surprised because it's like you were saying about, you're not really sure about the title. I 4 or 5 minutes in, I'm thinking I didn't know what I was going to expect when I started this, and 5 minutes in, I didn't really know where it was going. By 7 minutes, I was kind of hooked and gripped and amazed and surprised.
Yeah,
because it was. This sounds a bit like I'm being a bit superlative here, but it was like, again, nothing else that I'd heard before. This is storytelling, is it? Is this comedy though?
Well, that's a good point. Certainly, I mean, it's made by the BBC's comedy department. But what I like about it, and what she's particularly strong on, is those. It's almost bipolar, isn't it? The mood swings between tragedy and comedy. And it put me in mind of a quote of the great Johnny Spate, who you will know was the writer of Till Death Us Do Part.
Death Us Do Part, yeah.
Alf Garnett and all of that. And for our younger audience, go back into the mists of time on YouTube. I'm sure there's stuff out there. And Johnny Spate said quite simply, and he's probably not the first to say it, probably goes back to the Greeks even, but he said, tragedy and comedy are two sides of the same coin. But usually you don't get the coin flipped so suddenly that 1 minute you're laughing and the next it's kind of a respectful silence or almost a lump in the throat, really. Did you find that too much of a gear change?
Well, I think it wasn't. I didn't really know what to expect. Like I say, I came into it thinking we're going to listen to a comedy programme. And of course, 5 minutes in, I'm thinking, well, this isn't very funny. It's clever and it's erudite and it's articulate, but it isn't very funny. And I'm kind of almost like counting the jokes, as it were. And then after about 7 or 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in, Adrian, it kind of dawned on me, and I thought, no, this isn't comedy in the true sense of the word. This is more storytelling. I tell you who she put me in mind of. Have you heard of Tom Wigglesworth?
Oh yes, again, I've heard him through the fine auspices of Radio 4. He's a stand-up as well, isn't he?
Well, again, he's a storyteller. I think he's more of a. If I say Tom Wigglesworth. David Sedaris was another one that I thought of. The way.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like she's written an essay rather than a stand-up routine. But I don't know why I kept thinking of Maureen Lipman every time I heard her as well. She's the timbre of her voice kind of led me to think about Maureen Lipman and the way that she tells stories as well. But I was blown away because I wasn't expecting it at all. Don't you think? It's more of an essay kind of thing. It's almost like she's written an essay and he's recounting that in that sort of way rather than... It's not stand-up, is it, in that sense?
No, it's not stand-up. I would call it... it's not the sort of thing you put in Billings because it might frighten people off, but having had a chance to digest it, both of us... and I don't mean to put off any of our Comedy Slab listeners, but I might go for something like a tragi-comic monologue. As I say, that you probably wouldn't put that on a DVD or a download Billings description because it might frighten the horses, but actually...
Well, the word monologue for me, I'd be like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
because that is such a difficult thing to sustain, isn't it?
It is, but yeah, the people who can do it, you've named a couple of good ones. Interestingly, Tom Wigglesworth, you mentioned, his comedy, or certainly what I've heard on Radio 4, is very family-oriented, isn't it?
Yeah.
If we're thinking about the same show, perhaps.
He's done two styles. He did one, I think it was Tom Wigglesworth's Hang-Ups, I think was one style where it was very much an essay, and then he had another one with his family actors playing the parts of his family as well, which is and I was kind of disappointed because I felt he'd sort of sold out to a mainstream format when I thought actually no, he's quite good at doing the format that he does. He should stick to the, to just him doing the monologue in the same way that Sarah Kendall does. I was like I say, it was such a breath of fresh air. And then once I'd got that, if I'd have had some warning, maybe I'd have come to it sooner. Maybe if I'd have listened to the other two episodes, I'd have come to it sooner. I settled into it straight away, and I kind of now the next clip that you're going to play was for me was a laugh out loud moment. I just thought it was just genius. It's just brilliant, and that was the point where I was completely on side with her, and I thought, yeah, she got my vote. I love it. I really love it. But I wouldn't call it. I was going to say I wouldn't call it comedy. I don't know what I'd call it there.
But it does have laughs as well here. I mean, she is going down well in the room.
And rightly so as well, because it's top quality material, isn't it? When I'm saying it's not comedy, I'm saying like I'm complaining. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I didn't come away and go, well, that wasn't comedy, was it? Do you know what I mean?
You didn't hand back your OBE in disgust.
No, nobody's getting that off me. It was just. I've thought about nothing else ever since. Actually, I keep kind of having sort of flashbacks to it and thinking because it was so different, because it was something that I wasn't really expecting.
You don't mean PTSD flashbacks?
No, they were pleasant.
When you say you've thought of nothing else, I've got to check. Is your son safe?
I can't remember where I left it.
Anyway, I think as your punishment, as your reward, you're okay to lead into our next clip then, number 2.
I was going to say, you lead into the clip. I'll go and find my son, but I think I know where he is actually now I've said it. Like I say, this was a laugh out loud moment for me. I thought this is when, my hat came off to her, and I thought this is top quality writing. This is so clever. You mentioned the grandmas.
This is the other one, isn't it?
This is the other. This is the boring one, isn't it?
Before she was boring, as we find out.
Well, that's right. Yeah, before she was boring. I mean, as she described it, I think she said she was a tearaway at the age of 12. But I'll let her explain.
My grandma Alva was a young girl, and her family, they lived on a farm. It was during the Great Depression, and because work was so scarce, a lot of men took to the road. In Australia, we called them swagmen, and they'd go from farm to farm and offer themselves as labour. And apparently my grandma Alva used to love this non-stop stream of swaggies. She'd sneak them booze, she'd memorise their jokes, tell them to the next swaggies who arrived. She even got a belt across the back of the knees when her dad found her telling a joke that ended on the punchline, "You push it to the side before you start eating." One evening, a swaggy who they'd helped out, he came back at night. He tried to steal some of their sheep. And Grandma Alva, who at the time of the incident was 12 years old, grabbed a carving knife, chased him across a field, and stabbed him in the back. And she didn't just stab him once. And that man was my grandfather Ken. Listen, no, that doesn't even make any sense, guys. Your faces!
Now, this is fascinating because she likes, I can't think of a better term than monkeying around with her audience. There's a couple of instances, one of which you've just heard, where she is stretching the credulity. But this, fascinatingly for me, raises the question, and I sort of raised it last week in trailing it in setting your homework, as we do on the Slab at the end of each show. So I hope you've got some homework for me this week. I mentioned the fact that there is a question for me about how literally we take everything. Did you, I mean, obviously you're a convert. You were won over Well, by 10 minutes in, at least, it says.
Once I understood what it was,
yeah.
but did
it worry you how much you could? Sorry to interrupt. Did it worry you how much you could believe every last detail, or did you accept there's a bit of artistic license there to get the laugh or to neaten the story? Because she ties all her loose ends at the end.
It's really weird that you should say that, because in my notes, I'd put a note to the effect that I spent a lot of time, my mind was racing, and I was wondering what's real and what isn't real. I started thinking, is any of this real? Is none of it real? And then I was starting to think about the process. Did they sit down and write a script? Is she reading that script? Is she just doing it off the cuff? Is it? And my mind was racing and I always think that's a good thing if you're kind of like listening to somebody and you're kind of thinking that much at the same time. It's like, the Clint Eastwood Stan Laurel thing.
Yes.
That she mentions. She mentions is Clint Eastwood Stan Laurel's son.
That's is it her uncle or one of her family members holds to that theory, which I like.
But did you know that is a widely believed theory?
Is it? Is it by the same people who think the astronauts didn't actually land on the moon?
It could possibly be. I think there's they're a constantly changing group, aren't they? I think, really. But no, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I've heard that before. And while I was listening to it, I typed in Clint Eastwood, Stan Laurel, and there's like all these things come up about whether Clint. Apparently, it was a British cartoon, a British comic. Ran a picture of Clint Eastwood with his hair all raised up. And somebody said, and he looks like Stan Laurel. And they also reckon that Clint Eastwood was born on the day that Stan Laurel's wife gave birth to a stillborn son. And they believe that he didn't die, it was actually Clint Eastwood. Although why you would do that, they never really got... And it is a complete myth, but it's a thing. So I kind of think, she's now, her uncle believes that. Does he really believe that, or do
we believe that she did have an uncle who believed it?
Exactly.
Gosh, how did you have any time to actually take in what she was saying? And
in fairness, I had to stop it at that point because I was too engrossed as to whether Clint Eastwood was Stan Laurel's son or not.
Well, I've got to ask: is Paul McCartney dead because he was barefoot on Abbey Road's zebra crossing?
Oh, Fall.
What?
That's what they call him, is it? Fall. Faul, fake Paul. That's
before the fall. I wasn't even aware that fall was a thing. God, you're doing my head.
I've seen every conspiracy theory on that one. Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and you're about to take a swig. I can see on Skype from your Campari glass, which you claim to be blackcurrant or rosehip or something.
Cheers, Fenella, wherever you are, darling.
Yes, to you, darling. And I will raise a glass of water, local tap water. We live high on the hog here in Kent.
Yeah. But beautiful writing, clever writing, as you say, the way a real writer ties up everything at the end. It was, I don't know, the whole thing I just thought was just so different.
But does it become immaterial? Sorry to bang on about this factual thing. It reminds me, actually, I had a night class once in creative writing, as one does, and I was introduced to a new genre, new to me, probably been going for aeons. I should have been aware of it, but I'm not a great reader. I'm more of a listener to the radio, as we've gathered. But autobiographical fiction, which our tutor in the night class insisted was quite different from fictional autobiography. And that did my head in. I mean, it's almost a contradiction in terms, but that makes it interesting anyway. Your autobiography, you would think, well, that's what happened to me. Fictional autobiography almost contradicts that. Oh, well, it didn't really happen to me, or did it?
No. I didn't know that was a thing. When did that become a thing? Is that a thing?
Well,
is it a famous thing that you could know?
It was a thing before we used to use the term, is that a thing? That's how long ago it is.
I've always used the term, is that a
thing. You have not.
Everybody else
started
doing it.
It became a thing after other people used it.
I started saying about a thing the same you started saying so in front of a
I never started so.
Like, it so hasn't. And
that's in the middle of a sentence.
Do you know the one that drives me nuts at the moment is everything's super. Everything is preceded by the word super.
Is it super good?
We're having super fun doing this, and it's super efficient and super duper pooper scoop. Honestly, it drives me mad.
Yeah, well, you wait till your son starts picking up on these phrases, that will drive you nuts, because you'll start correcting him as your dad corrected you at the dinner table or whatever.
Yeah.
To absolutely no effect.
He's not Superman, he's just a man.
On his own planet, apparently.
What about the pathos in all of this? I got really emotional, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. Yeah. No spoiler alert, because I'm not going to spoil it, but blooming heck.
Yeah, you could say there is some emotional manipulation going on, but then any show person, particularly one person show, and particularly something that purports to be autobiographical, wherever we are with that, to what degree we believe that. I mean, I'm sure the structure and the basic bones of it is for real. But yeah, you can sense the waves. You hear the waves, don't you, in the audience reaction, and the absolute dead silence she gets at points when seconds before she's had massive throaty laugh from everyone. Yeah. I mean, to have that is true control of your audience, isn't it?
Do you know, I came away from all of this thinking as well, I wanted to, and I said this last week, and I know you're right, I know you're right, about you don't really want to see behind the curtain, but I kind of almost, you want to see, there's part of me that wants, as a kid, I used to take the back off things to figure out how they work.
Right.
And
you're the blighter who always left me with things with the back missing.
That's exactly, like a separate box with all the screws that are left over. And there's part of me that with this, Adrian, as well. Do you hear it and know what the process is, or because I mean you've worked in radio comedy, and I just wonder whether you listen to that and you think, yeah, that's scripted, or she's doing that off the cuff, or.
I would say, I mean, I find it quite endearing how much you're prepared to credit what we've listened to and watched over the weeks already. Credit that with being ad-libbed, because I think by the time you get to the final cut for TV or radio, I'm perfectly happy to accept, as I was saying last week, if people want to scroll back to last week's show, that things are born out of ad-libbery. Loads of shows come out of that, and I don't feel cheated. A thing? It is now. It's definitely a thing, but it's a thing.
So thing.
It so is now. Yeah. We've decided.
Yeah. Sorry, God.
So but that's it really. That I think. I mean, you could trace probably 80% of shows are born out of some kind of ad-libbing, if I may use that term now. It's like Eddie Izzard said when asked. His style, I'm sure you've seen that on the box, if not live, it is faux, not quite full, as in faux Paul, but it is faux ad-libbed. But he's even been in interviews saying no more than 10% is ad-libbed. But the feel you get in the room is, easily 50%. I just think that's part of the craft. As I say, I don't feel cheated. And so I would think pretty much every word is scripted. That's only a gut feeling. I haven't got any inside info. I happen to know one of the people who worked on the show, but I haven't had any subterfuge or any secret releases on it.
The other reason I say that is because the pace and the timing is excellent as well, isn't it? But again, of course, that's, I mean, you can rehearse that and you can get it right, can't you, I suppose, in that sense. But we've got another clip, haven't we? I just thought
we have indeed, yes, before we natter on. This is, clip number 3. This is her dad telling a story. She's recalling his and his wife's, i.e. Sarah's mum's 50th, it's the 50th wedding anniversary party, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And he is telling a story, and she tells us the story of the story, which is rather nice. So let's enjoy this as if we're at the 50th wedding anniversary.
My dad proceeds to tell a story to the gathering. It's about a morning back in February 1986 when we stood out on the front lawn together to see Halley's Comet. Me and my brother, we glanced at each other. We lied to him that morning. We said that we'd seen the comet. I can't believe my dad's telling this story at a wedding anniversary. I mean, this, in my memory, was one of the lowest points of their marriage. And my dad tells the room why Halley's Comet meant so much to him. He says Halley's Comet comes into the Earth's orbit around once every 75 years, which also happens to be roughly the average human lifespan. So each time Halley's Comet comes back, there's a whole new set of people on Earth, a fresh audience, seeing it for the first time. But we're not really that different. We're all subject to the same forces of good luck and bad luck. And my mum cuts him off. Phil, people did not die 75 years ago from choking on Dr. Dre wireless earbuds.
Again, beautiful writing, and of course, not often that you hear the phrase Dr. Dre wireless earbuds.
Or from your mother.
Yeah, or in a
now
comedy
that
show
one,
these days.
I think it unlikely her mother is. I feel sorry for her real mother, who probably doesn't talk quite so shrilly.
Yeah.
Is that a thing, shrilly? Shrilly. She probably wouldn't know the phrase Dr. Wireless, Dr. Dre. I'll try that again. Dr. Dre wireless earbuds. But do we cut her slack on that?
Dr. Wireless dreadful earbuds.
Yes, even I can't get the
of those,
phrase
did they? Roll up, get your Dr. Wireless dreadful earbuds.
I don't know.
Guaranteed to stick in your ear and give you adenoids a problem.
It's stuck in my throat. That was the problem. For some reason, I got an image of Q-tips. I don't mean the band with Paul Young in. Or Paul McCartney. It's just earbuds, I suppose. But anyway.
Oh, dear. Judge Dredd wired ear floods.
Now you're taking the Michael out of me, not out of her mum.
Excuse me. Don't stop me coughing, otherwise I'll never stop.
Well, I think we should go to another ad break for
California. Was I the only one thinking, is there going to be a joke at the end? Is there going to be a joke at the end? Is there going to be a joke at the end?
At the very end of the show?
Yeah.
Did you think it 3 times?
I did. I was
your frenetic.
Thinking, is there going to be a joke at the end? Is there?
There had to be. But then there was quite a philosophical wrapping up, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, I don't know where it sits in the world of entertainment, but I'm just glad it's there, really, to be honest with you. It did make me think what a sad state of affairs that there aren't storytelling. There isn't because if you're a comedian, you can go and do comedy and do comedy shows. Where would you do story? Would you do storytelling in that environment as well? Because if you're not hitting the gag rate.
That's an interesting one, because a mate asked me the other day, and it's not coincidence that he was reading one of my attempted comedy scripts. He said, what should be the standard gag rate? Which was his way of saying, blimey, I've been reading this for pages. There hasn't been a gag for a while, right. I think. I was actually, no, it's a funny thing, because I'm the kind of nerd I am, and to prepare for the show, I happened to be listening to Hancock's Half Hour on the radio the other day. And a quality of writing there, amazing. I was looking at the clock for his gag rate, or Galton and Simpson's gag rate, the writers. I would say, what would you guess if you had to pluck a figure out the air, assuming you hadn't been dull enough to do what I did?
Every minute?
Much more than that. Every 10
really?
to 20 seconds.
Wow.
And the only time there was more than 20 seconds was a musical sting. The band came in.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's quite...
and when you think how many episodes of Hancock there wrote,
yeah.
And then went on to write Steptoe and Son and all the other fantastic stuff that they brought us, and you think how many gags were in that? I don't know, maybe they recycled a lot of stuff, who knows? Was the guy that you know from this Carl Cooper by any chance?
It's not actually. I know the production coordinator. People say, don't they, on the air, particularly in the journalistic world, they say full declaration, I know so-and-so, or I'm on this board. Actually, it's not a full declaration. If I gave you a full declaration, I'd have to go through my life story, which would be more than a trilogy and not quite as entertaining as hers. So a partial declaration, I happen to know Bev, who's done all the hard work in the background. You could say the power behind the throne. But, good job you mentioned Carl's name. So Carl Cooper's the producer, but also you will have picked up, I'm sure, knowing your obsession with detail, that he's credited as co-writer with Sarah Kendall. Do you think, as I do, that he probably acted in more of a script editor role alongside her?
Yeah, I think, and I wonder how much of the shaping of what she does and how she does it comes from Carl as well, because I'm racking my brains trying to think where I knew his name from, because you hear the name of the credits if you listen to radio comedy, don't you, of course, at the end.
Yeah.
And it turns out he was Mark Steele's producer for Mark Steele's In Town.
Ah, right. Oh, long-running series going around the UK.
Which is a very, very similar kind of, it's almost like a storytelling session, isn't it? It's not gag laden in that sense, but a very, very enjoyable and clever piece of work there. And I wonder whether that comes from Carl, whether Carl has influenced, and said, look, if she came with sort of part of the story, and he said, look, we can do it like this and make it sound like this, because there was even a bit of sound sculpture at the end, wasn't there? Like to build up the emotion. Did you notice that at the end? There was a little
bit of underplayed music and atmosphere, really, more than music.
Yeah, atmos, wasn't it? Rather music, yeah. Which I kind of thought again would have been coming from him. But yeah, I was fascinated because I thought, Mark Steele's In Town again. I would have put in the similar vein as Tom Wigglesworth, and to a lesser extent or a greater extent, whichever way you look at it, David Sedaris and the other people that I mentioned. But yeah, so I don't know whether it's his influence or whether you'd have to see her in stand-up, wouldn't you, to figure out what she does?
Well, what I did find out, I'd love to see her in stand-up now, and see how much this is her style or how much it's perhaps changed the style. But what I did read is that this has grown out of 3 years' worth of, hence the trilogy thing, really, of Edinburgh one-woman shows that Sarah Kendall's done.
Right.
So I think I would, this is only guesswork, but I think Carl Cooper's role would be more a sort of steering and moulding into a half-hour Radio 4 friendly show. And I don't mean that as anything other than a compliment, but just to find a way of putting her one-woman show, making it into a kind of show that you could be driving along and enjoying, or whatever else you're doing while you're listening to the radio.
The problem with what she has now, with this success, I think, is how material intensive it can be.
Oh, it eats up your own material, doesn't it? That's famously, which is why you end up with writers, isn't it, if you become a name.
Yeah. I mean, she can't wander off now and go, I'll see you in 3 years when I've done another 3 years.
When I've had another life.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's which is the shame of it, because it deserves to have a longer shelf life, I think, in a way. I mean, I'm certainly going to go back and, if I can, listen to the other two and listen to the last one all over again, because I think it warrants that. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a big fan of clever writing, as you know, and I thought it was very, very clever writing, and I thought it was excellent delivery. The only regret I have, and it's a small price to pay, is that I didn't really know what I was going into before I got into it.
That's my fault. I think that's a veiled criticism of me, you Ross.
You're a git.
Yeah, but a fully paid up git. I so am proud, perversely, of my gittering. Is that a thing?
You're a super git.
Flatterer. So we are moving inexorably towards giving it a rating each, however many stars out of 5, and then you'll get the maths wrong, no doubt, when you add the two numbers together, as you usually do.
You bitch.
I'm going to bleep you. I've got to bleep you, you bleeping bleeper.
Yeah.
Right, so who wants to go first with the star rating?
You always force me out into the...
Yeah, I'm a rotter, aren't I?
Star ratings.
Well, unusually for me, maybe I'm getting the hang of this thing as you swig some more Campari, I can see on Skype. Stop it. I said swig, not actually gargling.
Swizzle.
Yeah. I'm going to give it 4, and I'm going to trot out my tired old line about nothing's perfect. So I haven't given a 5 yet. I worry that if I ever get to 5, there's nowhere to go after that. So 4 is very good from me. If that's any consolation to anyone,
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm thinking 4.5 now. You give yours, and then I'll see if I shouldn't be swayed by you.
No, you shouldn't do that.
I didn't mean you were going to sway me. I just need thinking time.
You shouldn't be allowed to do that. You should.
Oh, are we allowed to
be
give?
Swayed?
Are we allowed? Brett Anderson's allowed to be swayed. See what I did there? Now, are we allowed fractions? We know other than half.
What is this tribute to Frankie Howard in the voting?
See, I'm giving up. I'm taking up valuable time, which would never have been the case if you'd gone ahead. You see,
We can edit all this out.
Yeah, probably have to.
4.5 or 4? Come on.
Oh, 4.5 then. Hang the expense.
Okay.
Over
Well,
to
now
you.
you said that.
No, you shouldn't be influenced, you rotter.
Now,
Go on then.
let me explain where I am with it. I don't know whether to give it a 4 or a 3. And in my heart, I want to give it a 3. I want to take a point off it because it's not comedy.
Ooh.
In the strictest sense of the word. But I think
There is comedy in it, though.
Yeah. But if it had to stand up just purely on its comedy,
Stand
I
up.
think it's
You're
only
doing
worth a
fun
3. What?
there. You used the word stand up in the middle of your sentence. I thought
Oh,
you were
sorry.
doing
Yeah. Stand
Hashtag
up, yeah.
stand up.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
well, hang on. If we're going to be like that, why rate it at all? If it's not what it claims to be,
Yeah,
well, are we
you're
just
right.
going to have to call this the Slab this week because you think there's no comedy in there, which there clearly is?
No, the more I think about it, the more I think that would be cruel and unusual. Punishment. So,
And quite bizarre, given your fulsome praise, and that's FAUL some praise.
I loved it. I mean, I thought it was, like I say, I thought it was really, it was super clever. That's
Unlike
how clever
that
it was.
description of it. Well, it's got to be a 4. From your, I think anyone would be baffled, myself included, if after what you said you'd give a 3. It doesn't make sense, mate.
I'll give it a 4.
Excellent.
So it gets 6.25.
Very funny. Back to school for your maths.
I've got to get new batteries for this calculation.
You must do. I think you got it upside down. It is, of course, 8.5. Big top 40 stars we've given it. So it's time for homework, dear headmaster.
Oh, you're going to tell everybody where you can get it from, though. You can get it on the BBC website, the BBC iPlayer, and
I play a radio app on your little smartphone.
if you've got a BBC fridge, then it's in the freezer compartment at the top.
Yes, just to the left of the peas.
That
And
just-
a reminder, it's a BBC Studios production, and we gathered the mighty Carl Cooper was the producer. But look out for her on all platforms, and as I say, if you get a chance to see her live, I'll see you in the audience if you're around these parts.
She's, I didn't know, you used to work on the railways. Look out for her on all platforms.
Boom! That's so Victorian, that gag. I don't think Frank will approve when he hears that in years to come.
I'm going to have to, as my son gets older, I'm going to have to explain a lot of jokes. That's what certainly mine anyway.
If you have to explain it, it ain't any good. It's the general.
Exactly, especially mine. So for next week, then your homework, if you choose to complete it, and if you
I don't get a choice.
What a damn good reason why, young man. I thought I'd choose something that I don't think either of us have seen. That could be a little bit controversial. And is, again, a different style of comedy. What I call discomfort comedy.
There's a lot of that.
Where you kind of think, oh, is this funny or is this just uncomfortable? And this guy specialises in it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there are many. I mean, as a stand-up, I would go straight to Jimmy Carr, but you're probably not talking about him.
I know. More international than Jimmy Carr. I'm talking about Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, is this the America thing?
Yeah.
I can't wait for an excuse to watch it.
Who is America has just finished its run. I think, was it on Channel 4, I think? It was,
I believe so. We will get all the details to you. But,
yeah, we'll give you full details next week. But I keep seeing bits of it on the internet that people have cut off and trailers and all that sort of stuff, and I think, we've got to have a look at this on the Slab because it's. I don't know if have you seen Borat and the movies and things that he's done as well.
Some of them, yeah. And of
very
course, going right
uncomfortable.
back to the 11 o'clock show is when he just got a little 5-minute slot on that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's one to stick on the Slab. So, who is America? Sacha Baron Cohen. His brand new series, which has just finished its run of 7. Why do they do all these weird numbers for series now? It's odd, isn't it? I don't know.
It's literally odd, because you're so good with numbers, as we know.
Exactly.
And talking of numbers, I can confirm it's on all 4. So it was Channel 4 now.
It was Channel 4,
on their
yes.
catch-up
And they're quite
service.
good. They leave stuff on for yonks.
Oh,
So
yeah, brilliant.
If you've discovered this episode of the podcast in a time capsule, don't worry, it's probably still on all four if it's 300 years later.
Yeah, we croaked decades ago, but this show is still available.
Exactly. So anyway, that's your homework for next week. So we'll look forward to that. I've got to thank you for this week because, as I say, again, you've steered me in the direction of something that I mightn't ordinarily... I mean, looking at it, I would have thought, I'll look at that later, and would have passed up on it. I'm so glad that I did miss the opportunity to hear that episode. I'm going to go back and grab the other two. So thanks for that, mate.
It's what your comedy slab's for. Before we get to the social meds, sorry, I zoned out if you mentioned an episode. Did you want me to go for the last episode?
Well, if you're not listening, you're going to have to rewind the podcast and think, no, I didn't actually. That's probably why.
Your faux pas or faux pas.
I tell you what, pick a number between 1 and 7.
Well, I like 7. I'm staring at the picture now, so I'm
okay. We'll do episode 7, shall we?
Yeah. I mean,
I'll be really upset if there's only 6, but
well, the last in the series, whichever that is.
Pretty certain it is 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. It looks convincing. Right, so to social media, guess what? We're at Comedy Slab on the Twitter and also at Facebook. And anything else you want to confess to?
No, I need to say that you can get us on most places now. I mean, I'm delighted that we're now on Spotify as well, so you can catch the previous episodes on there. If you've got Spotify on your phone, I know some people have, that you can hear it on that. iHeartRadio and all the other usual places that you get your podcast from. We're appearing on those as we speak, so that's pretty good news.
It's excellent news. More platforms than King's Cross in London.
And then he accuses me of doing Victorian jokes.
Victorian wood jokes would be good. Anyway, yeah, that just about wraps it up. You could suggest via those social medias other shows for us to slab around with. And we'd love it if you recommended us to friends, family, even to enemies, fiends and friends, whoever. And do please, on bended knee, we would love a generous star rating on iTunes / Apple Podcasts, please, if you could.
So
stretch to that.
Until the next time, thanks for being with us, and we'll catch you on the slab next time around.